Welcome to Inspiring Possible. I'm Christy Pennison, former stuck person turned therapist and dream consultant. Are you feeling stuck, overwhelmed, uncertain, or just need a little inspiration? Then I want to help you gain the clarity, confidence, and courage to create possibilities and live a life you love. Because folks, life's too short to be miserable.
Welcome back, Inspiring Possible people. I say this probably at the beginning of every episode, but I am just so thankful that you came back and are listening. And I think this conversation is going to add some incredible value to your life today and hopefully help you rethink just some things that you might want to implement and bring into your life that may help you live a little bit more confidently, courageously, and a little bit fuller, and maybe even escape the cycle that we can so easily find ourselves in today, which is from burnout or perfectionism, or feeling like you start something and you can't gain any momentum on it because you're like always just like, and I have an idea, Courtney, of something that happens for me. I have really good motivation and I start out on it and then something throws me off in my routine and then I'm back to square one trying over to restart. But if that has ever been you, well, congratulations, you came to the right show. And I have a phenomenal guest who I've already enjoyed talking with before we even push the record button. And this is someone who's helped women worldwide take better care of themselves with more consistency and ease over the past 20 years. And she's had a podcast that she has been pouring into women for 12 years, guys. So wrap your head around that. And also, she came out with a book towards the end of next year that you're going to have to go grab called The Consistency Code. So she's a lot of things. She's a certified nutrition coach. She's also a certified strength coach and a certified life coach. So she's going to help us on all the things on how to stay more consistent on some of the habits we want to create for our life. So I am glad and proud to welcome Courtney Townley to the show. Welcome, Courtney.
Oh, thanks so much for having me. I'm really happy to be here.
Yeah, so we could probably talk about this from even I'm going to be the personal guinea pig for this whole show today. So I'm going ahead and let my listeners and put myself out of there. What did the consistency code, how did that get birthed into existence? And where in your story did you feel like, okay, I feel like I really need to put this out into the world?
Yeah. So the wellness industry is the only industry I've ever worked in. I'm going to be 50 in February, so it's been a hot minute, right? I've done pretty much everything you can do.
And you look incredible. Let's go ahead and put that out there too. I mean, you're for listeners, you can't see her, but you looking 50 and fabulous. I know you're not there yet, but
I'm feeling fabulous.
Yeah.
But I definitely went through a lot of learning in, I would say, like the first 15 to 20 years of my career, which I think is very common. And I was very passionate about all the things I was learning. But I was also seeing patterns in my clients that started to kind of disturb me in a way, that they were following these protocols. But then as soon as the protocol was over or the program was over, they would backslide into old behaviors. And I didn't really understand why that was happening. And I went through a lot of frustration with my own health journey because in my mid-30s, I had my child and I was really rumbling on the other side of that in so many ways. But people came to see me and all they were talking about is how quickly I lost the baby weight. Like it was all about my body. And it just blew my mind because I was like, I'm drowning here and nobody's asking me about that. So it was kind of this collision of realizing that I had learned a lot and I was very successful, but I was also very frustrated and realizing that now I had a lot of unlearning to do because it wasn't just about following rules and regulations. And I was seeing that in my own life. I was seeing it with my clients. I also moved for the first part of my career mostly through the space that health was all physical, right? It was and how you moved and what time you went to bed. And yes, those things matter. But health is multidimensional. Health is mental, emotional, relational,
spiritual even,
spiritual, environmental. And so we can't just address one little bucket of health and call it health, right? It's like, so that really just got my wheels turning and I really wanted to have a much bigger conversation. And around that time, I also hired a business coach because I was moving my business online. And it was really hard to get across this message to the coach of what I wanted to talk about, because even my coach was so caught in, well, you should just talk about fat loss because you've been in that space for so long and you've been really successful with it. And I was like, yeah, but I don't want to be in that space anymore because I don't
I'm
think
trying to
that's
transition out of this. Yeah.
yeah.
But
So
still
her
just do the whole
task
picture. Yeah.
totally. Her task for me was to go away for a weekend and to really chew on, if there were only 4 things that I could teach a woman, what would these 4 things be? And that literally was the birth of the consistency code. And it's not just 4 practices, it's 4 buckets of practices. And so I created this whole course around it. I've been teaching the course for a decade. Like you said, I've had a podcast for 12 years. And I just got to the point where I was like, okay, it would be a lot easier for someone to read a book at this point than to go through 600 episodes of a podcast and, go through all the courses I've created. So let's just create this really great entry point. And that's how the book was birthed.
Oh, that's amazing. Okay,
Yeah.
so, I and probably all the listeners are wanting to hear what are the four things.
Yes. Well, let me
I'm like
preempt it by
dialed in now,
saying,
Courtney. I'm like, please give me the secret,
I
okay?
know. It's super unsexy stuff. That is I always preface it with that.
It
Like I
always
teach
is when it comes to just like
always.
honestly, it's like the things that like people I don't know about you, but I think and I can imagine still in the health space, and especially with how many things have emerged in the past several years, kind of in the health and wellness space, but like I think we're all looking for that magic thing, and I'm sure what you're about to share with us in those 4 buckets are not gonna be anything that's just super, like, I've never heard of that before. It's just
Yeah.
remembering that it's these sort of things.
It's a
Okay, so go
reminder.
ahead.
Exactly. And I will say, like, first of all, the consistency code is all about self-leadership because I feel like being in the wellness industry as long as I have, what the wellness industry is really good at is encouraging people to outsource everything around their health to the point that women don't trust themselves at all, not with what they
Mm,
eat or how they move. It's like they always need guidance to do these things. And look, guidance can be awesome. Like, I'm a huge fan of hiring helpers and healers. That being said, there will inevitably always come a point where you have to take the ball and run with it on your own. And if you do
yeah,
not have the skill sets in order to do that, really, what's it going to get you in the long run, right? A lot of inconsistency. And so the consistency code is really the buckets of self-leadership. And the first bucket is self-awareness, right? And I always say awareness is not a feel-good exercise because it's kind of like how my son cleans the room, how most women move through their life. They kind of want to shove things under the bed or into the closet and call it clean. But I will save you I will spare you the details of the things we have found in my son's room by
well, listen,
doing
I have a
that.
teenage daughter, and let me tell you something, Courtney. There has been some things. I'm like, where did this come from? Especially
Yeah,
if I want to go deep diving under her bed.
of
I'm like,
course.
what? And we not even talk about the things I found in that room. But anyways, go ahead.
Yeah. So
I hear
healing
you.
happens in the light, and the things that we're
Hmm.
avoiding are costing us tremendously because if you think about it, you behave a certain way to avoid stress in your life. You eat, you drink, you Netflix, you scroll, you shop. You basically do buffer. You do things that alter your chemistry artificially, and it feels good temporarily, but of course we all know there's long-term consequences to those kinds of behaviors. And so we have to get very real about not just what we're doing, but why we're doing it. There's something you don't want to feel, or you're talking to yourself about a situation in a way that makes you want to hide rather than move through it.
Yeah.
And so self-awareness it's 101. And we live at a time where you named this beautifully. There is so much information coming at us. A good friend of mine calls it infobesity. There's so much information that we're consuming all the time that we're almost feeling paralyzed to take action. Or we become room bouncers, where we're bouncing from room to room to room, collecting information, but never really sticking with anything long enough to allow it to work. And so self-awareness is having awareness of how you think about your life and possibility for your life, how you actually behave around the things you're trying to change. It's having awareness of your emotional landscape, because that's not something a lot of us were ever taught, right? We
No.
would love to avoid our emotional landscape most of the time. And we have a lot of devices and vices that help us to do that. But it's coming at an extreme cost because it's costing us our health. So self-awareness is 101. Then we go into, once you're aware of how you're showing up in your life and how you want to be showing up in your life, we recognize there's like a gap there,
Yeah.
right? We call it sometimes the river of misery.
Yeah. Oh, I like that
Yeah.
analogy.
Yeah.
You have the whole river of misery that you have to find a way to cross to get to the other side.
That's just it, right? And crossing that river is just not super fun, but it is par for the course if you want to change your life. And once we can see kind of the work we're being called into in the river. And by the way, I've never met a woman in 30 years because I work primarily with women. I know your audience is all
Yeah.
genders and all the things, but mainly the group I work with. And I've never met a human that has not known at least one, if not 50 things they could be doing to get to the other side of the river.
Oh, 100%. We all, if we're really, well, like you said, if you're self aware or if you're at least honest with yourself,
Yeah.
most of the time, some of the things you could be doing. Like you said, we're even in infobesity. At this point, if you don't know, you can go find the answer. And it takes
Right.
2 seconds with the little help of a little chatty AI.
Yeah.
Go in there, put your stuff in there. You're going to find out what you need to do. Right. But we most know, but it's just the heart of crossing the river because I'm sure about what you're gonna say is, I know I don't like going in a river of misery, do you?
No. Which is why
No.
it's, we kid ourselves that it's more comfortable to stay on the other side, to stay in the place where we already are. But the reality is there's no benefit on the other side of that. It's just more of the same. But if we
Yeah.
get into the river and we start learning how to swim across, life starts to unfold in really beautiful ways. And so there's tremendous benefit to doing that work. And that's brave work. That is definitely brave work. And I want to circle back because you said something so great, which is that self-awareness it's honesty. It's self-honesty. It's radical self-honesty. And we don't really like to call ourselves out on
No,
our
it's
own
easier to
BS.
blame, Courtney. It's easier to blame something or somebody or the situation I'm in. Like,
Yeah.
we can all jump on the blame train. And I mean, I blame myself for some of the times that things that I know I should be or feel like I should be doing or habits I want to
Yeah.
adopt in my life to stay more consistent in. A lot of times my blame game will be for myself. Oh, I'm just too busy. Or, you know what? It's just a season for me. I'm in that season, of
Oh, yeah.
life that's just taking it. And I'm not saying that sometimes those aren't true situations, but it's the things I'm telling myself to avoid having to get in the dang river of misery so I can cross and go over to the other side, you know?
I often tell my clients when they're, telling me sort of the litany of reasons why they haven't done something that they committed to for themselves. All the things you just mentioned. I don't have time. I'm in a season. I was tired this morning. And you know what? All of that could be true. You're the only person who knows how much that's affecting you. But the reality is a lot of us also start to use a lot of excuses dressed up as grace, right? We're calling it
Ooh,
grace,
yeah.
but it's actually just a lot of excuses and fancy clothes. And so,
Mhm.
again, this is where that integrity work comes in because from the outside, I don't know why you do what you do. I don't know how tired you really are. I don't know how many times this week you've told yourself you don't have time, but you do. You know that the frequency and the cadence of that. And so when you're radically honest, you can say, okay, like I committed to, let's just say, like going for a walk after dinner every night this week, and I haven't gone once, and it's already Friday. Like,
Is that
is
a
that
real story?
really because I just couldn't? you know?
Yeah.
So we can always find the rationalizations, the negotiations, and the compromises if we're looking for them. But we can
Yeah.
also, and this is the power of mindset work, we can talk ourselves into the work. So the second bucket of practices after self-awareness is once you have that radical honesty and that radical awareness, is we have to start organizing ourselves in a way that honors the resources we actually have to start doing the work, not the resources we wish we had.
Ooh, that's a good one. Because I think a lot of times we just think if we had all these things and we want to start organizing like we're going to have these resources and they're really not accessible to us, or we just don't have access to them, or we haven't gotten to the place in life where we can really, like, I love how you said outsource
Yeah.
earlier, like
Yeah.
how we outsource stuff.
Yep.
Yeah, that may not be an option for you. That's not a resource.
Right.
So, how do you
If they
plan for the resources you have?
totally. And resources also being time, energy,
Mm,
mental bandwidth. Because how
yeah.
many people do you know? Because I know a lot of these people. I have been one of these people where you buy the really nice planner and you spend all weekend making it this majorly robust, organized system. And then Monday comes and you're already in a full face plant by Monday afternoon with the intentions of that planner. And
Every year,
so
Courtney, every year.
every year, right? Because what we do is we focus on changing too many things too fast. And I don't know. I mean, I will say that, like, for a lot of the population that I work with, which is midlife women, they often are also very low on resource availability. They don't have a lot of energy. They don't have a lot of time. And their chemistry is going really wonky because they're transitioning into menopause. And so if you tell yourself on Monday morning you're going to radically change your diet, you're going to start exercising aggressively, you're going to go to bed an hour earlier, you're going to meditate I mean, we've all heard this, we've all done
Yeah.
this.
Uh-huh.
And it's just too much too fast. It's like the fire hose versus just allowing the faucet to just turn on gently to fill the glass of water. We just want the faucet. Like that's all we
Yeah,
want. We don't
the
need the fire
faucet, and we
hose.
want it to happen tomorrow with the least amount of resistance possible. Like, can't we just,
Right.
you know?
I know. And I've seen a pattern in my career where the quicker someone is to reach a goal, the less likely they are to stay there.
Really? Okay,
Because
that makes sense because they didn't have the struggle to get there. They're like,
no,
well, they couldn't hold what they received, as what I think about it in
yeah,
some
that's a
ways in
great way to
life.
say
Like,
it.
sometimes we want this version of ourselves or version of a life or version of whatever it is what we're trying to change. But if we haven't kind of sometimes done the paddling across the river of misery, we're gonna
Yeah.
keep on going with the river,
Yeah.
then we get to the other side, and let's say we just were able to jump across it, then it's like, well, wait, when the next river shows up, we haven't learned the skills to really appreciate of how far we came to get to the other side and to maintain those habits that helped us to get there.
Well, and also, I think the wellness industry largely stays alive because it's always offering these 21-day, 3-month, 12-week programs that are super intense that really do ask you to overhaul so much at once. And then what happens when that's over is we're standing face to face with our real life and the reality that, hang on a second, so much of this doesn't actually fit in to my
Mm,
everyday real life.
yeah.
And so this is where, again, like we have to address the reality of the whole human, not just the fact that, yeah, sure, anyone can follow marching orders for 21 days.
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's always easy, but it's easier than
Yeah. But when you're by
having
yourself
to,
and there's nobody, the person that's not beating the drum behind you to be like, come on, let's do this. You just fall
exactly.
off. I mean, I've done it many times in my life, especially even when it comes to health and wellness. If the moment I don't have accountability or I don't have some type of somebody looking for me to show up somewhere and I'm supposed to do it myself and I hit one bad week
Yes.
where life just gets
Yes.
chaotic, then it just all goes out the window and then I have to try to restart. And then that's a whole thing,
Okay. I
And I
love that
know
you're
you've
naming
been in
this because
it.
this is why I wrote the
Yeah.
book, right?
That's right. And then you have to try to figure out a way to get back on the
Yes,
habit that you might have abandoned in your time of distress. And
exactly.
then if you don't have the systems in place that support you to get back there, then forget it. It's not happening,
Exactly.
Which
Yes.
I'm sure is what you've seen countless times. I know I'm not the only person here.
So many times. And I think even just that idea of restarting, we can't ever restart. We can resume, and resume is so
Mm,
much more grace-filled. I'm just resuming. That's all I'm doing. I'm
yeah.
resuming. I'm not restarting because, man, does restarting feel heavy.
Ooh, I like that. I just paused. I didn't stop.
Yeah. Yeah. You just paused. You took a little picnic on the side of the road, right? But I always
Mhm.
use the analogy of if you were going to go to the grocery store today and you've been there 1,000 times, you know how to get there. But you're driving there and you realize there's a detour because they're doing road work, right? I guarantee you would not pull over on the side of the road and pitch a fit for 6 months to a year that there was a detour. But that's what we do with our health.
That is so true. We so do it. And then we wake up a year later and why haven't I reached the goal or where I want to be?
Yes. So this goes into the third bucket of practices, which is all about the practice of follow through. And I really think of this as like sovereignty. It's like learning how to live in a way where you're in control, where you aren't always needing outside accountability and you aren't always needing information from other people. Because now that you have the self-awareness and you're starting to organize your days based on the energy availability you actually have, the follow-through piece is, I think, it's where I do most of my coaching. It's where most people rumble the most. It's emotional capacity, expanding our ability to feel all emotion, not just the feel-good stuff, but all of it, and not make it mean horrible things about us as people. So when I mess up and I feel disappointed, or I feel lonely, or I feel stressed out, I have a lot of control over what I make those things mean. I'm a meaning-making machine. And if I do not take agency over that, my brain will take me on a wild and suffer-laden ride. It will not be fun. And so we have to learn how to expand our capacity to feel things so we're not constantly reaching for those artificial fixes, the alcohol, the food, all the other things. And the second part of follow through is really, of course, the mindset work, which I think we create so much unnecessary emotion when we don't, what I call, parent your brain, right? Parenting your brain is learning how to use that very evolved prefrontal cortex in order to not let the amygdala, which is very reactive and kind of always scanning for threats. It thinks like you having to give a public talk today, it's convincing you that you're probably going to die. Okay, you're not going to die. You're just going to be a little uncomfortable. That's the truth. And so our executive center in our brain gives us that capacity to almost coach ourselves. We can coach ourselves out of the fear. We can coach ourselves into the work. We can coach ourselves to look at something that didn't work out the way we hoped as a learning experience rather than as failure. And that's all within our capacity if we learn the skill sets on how to do that. And it's crazy to me that this isn't taught in schools because...
Listen, Courtney, there's a lot of things I think that should be taught in school at this point. I'm like, forget all this other stuff that none of these kids are going to use in their everyday life. Let's teach emotional capacity, emotional awareness.
Yeah.
Let's teach financial literacy. Let's teach, health and wellness, how to maintain the body you've been given. Yeah. I mean, just so many things that there could be taught, but that's a whole nother podcast episode for that.
But two things I'll give your listeners, because I think having tangible things they can take away from this episode today.
Yeah, I love that.
When it comes to follow through, first of all, you're gonna misalign from your plan, right? You're gonna go off the rails at some point because we all do. And my favorite phrase is, so what, now what? So what that I had a glass of wine tonight instead of, completely abstaining from alcohol like I told myself I would. Now what am I going to do about it? Am I going to allow this to become a pattern? So tomorrow night and the next night and the next night, I'm going to still have alcohol? Or am I going to do something to make tomorrow night different? Right? So what, now what is really potent because it gets you very proactive and it also helps you to not make it a big deal. The other thing is when you, I have a lot of clients come on to coaching calls with me and they'll say, the first thing they want to talk about is what they didn't do well. And of course, I always make them start with a rise. Where are they winning? What's the victory, right? That's where we always start because I'm just trying to shift the pattern for them to recognize that things are always going well, but we have to look for them. But inevitably, we always get to what I call the rumble, which is where they feel like they're failing, what they screwed up. And first of all, I never choose the action steps for my clients. They do. And so they might come to a call and say, man, I committed to, again, that walk after dinner, and I just didn't do it this week at all. And I'll say, my answer is always the same, which is, okay, do you like your reasons? And that's a powerful question because I don't know what your reasons are. Did your best friend suddenly come into town that you haven't seen in 10 years and you spent a lot of time with her? That's amazing. I bet you would like your reasons if that was the case. But if it's because you just negotiated your way out of it every single night and you're radically honest with yourself about that, you're probably not going to love your reasons. And so, okay, we don't have to get into judgment with that, but let's be really curious about it. Why was that? Like, why did you do that? Were you tired? Were you not parenting your brain? Were you not allowing yourself to feel something hard, like the discomfort of having to get outside when it's raining? And that, to me, that's where all the gold is. When we look at why we didn't do something that we promised ourselves we'd do, we can learn so much about ourselves. But we don't
You
lean
really
into that. We
can.
hide from it.
Well, but like you said it, then that goes back to the self-awareness and radical honesty of
It
being
does.
able to
It's a
say, like,
circle.
yeah,
It's a circle. The
what
code is a
are my
circle.
reasons? And most of us, if we're honest, can totally be able to say whether the reasons were justified or they were just excuses in disguise, right?
Absolutely. I
Yeah.
can even tell when a client is talking to me, and you can tell they're trying to rationalize. And
Mhm.
of course, the job of any good coach is to just sort of gently and lovingly shine a light on that and say, kind of poke with enough questions so they eventually start
Mhm.
seeing that, okay, I really don't like my reasons for that. Okay, great. Why didn't you just say that at the beginning? Like, we could have gotten there so much faster. But
But
my
isn't that the
ultimate,
whole thing that, like, we all kind of face sometimes? It's like, there's some times where we could take the straight path, but
yeah,
again, if we haven't practiced the skill of just being radically honest with yourself and then with the people trying to hold you accountable, then you are gonna go around the mulberry bush, and eventually, maybe you'll land at the same place, maybe you won't, but it would be a lot easier to just go ahead and rip off a Band-Aid and just get it over with, be be
I
direct.
love that you're pointing that out because that is inherently the definition of practice. It's messy, it's sloppy, right? We practice because we want to get better. And so, but I don't know, somewhere along the line of growing up, we started to confuse practice with perfection,
Yeah.
right? And it's like, no, you don't, I mean, yes, the masters of anything still practice, but you don't have to practice at the depth you do when you've mastered something if you're a beginner. And most of us are coming into this work, even though we're adults, self-awareness, organization, we could still be beginners at 50, 60, 70 years old.
Well, and I had a guest one time that was in a previous conversation this year, actually, and they talked a lot about being a beginner and allowing ourselves to be beginners. And I think it is even for me, I actually, right around the time I had this conversation, and for those that want to go back and listen to it, I think it was Croft Edwards that we were talking about this. But he was talking about, I just started this new beginning thing of learning how to scuba dive, which I've been pursuing a certification to try to learn how to do this. Okay. Well, the first time that I did the course over the weekend, and all I've done is snorkeling in my life, I completely was a beginner and I'm used to doing well. Like I'm used to like catching things. And
Yeah,
like the
yeah,
first time, I'm like a fast learner in most time situations. In this situation, I not only had panic where I
yeah,
was trying to do this
sure.
skill of what they call mask clearing. I don't know if you've ever been scuba diving before,
I
but you
have
have to
not, but I am familiar with the practice. Yeah.
you just have to take your mask off and then put it back on your face underwater and then somehow get all the water out from the mask. Okay, but anyways, I did terrible. I panicked multiple times. I
Yeah.
kept on trying. I kept on trying to be, tenacious and I'm going to figure this out. Well, I ended up then creating some fear within myself. And so I was
Yeah.
like, I remember I left and I was like, I didn't pass what I was supposed to. And I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to do this. That was hard.
Sure.
But then I had a conversation with him and he reminded me, just like we're talking about right now, that like you have to allow yourself to be a beginner. And I'm like, yeah, that's right. I've never had to breathe underwater before without breathing through my nose. This might be something that I need to learn how to just learn to be a beginner in. And so it took me about a week or two, and then I committed to going back and trying to figure out the skill. And guess what? The second time I did it, I was fine. Now, I still need a lot of iterations to feel confident, comfortable, and everything, but I'm using that example as an example of what you're talking about. It's like kind of like we have to be a beginner at some things that we were maybe never taught, like self awareness. Believe it or not, a lot of people are never taught how to be self aware.
Well,
And if
I
you've
think
never had to do that, then it's a hard thing that you have to practice. And
mhm.
over time, then you start to get more aware. But if you're not used to looking at things within yourself, then that's a big thing to learn how to do.
Yeah, and you point to something so important, which is knowing and doing are two very different things. So I can read about scuba diving, I can read about clearing my mask, but doing the practice of it is something entirely different. So I know there's not a person listening to this show that has not heard the importance of self-awareness. They have heard it somewhere in their education, right? But have you practiced it? Like, what is your daily practice of self-awareness? How are you staying awake to how you're moving through the world? Because I
Oh,
think when
that's
we
good.
really reckon with
Mhm.
that question, a lot of times it's like in the modern world, it is so easy to sleepwalk. I am awake. I'm awake, but awake and aware are not synonymous.
Yeah.
And so it is, yeah, that developing those skill sets of awareness. And you're spot on. Like when you're rumbling with the follow through, the answer for why that's happening is back in the practice of awareness and learning how to ultimately become an amazing coach for yourself. Like I always joke with my clients, my job is to coach my way out of a job. So I want to be so good at my job with you that you start coaching yourself the way that I would coach you. You start asking a lot of pointed questions and you stay
Mhm.
really curious and you see possibility where maybe before you would have seen a stop sign. That's my goal. And I can tell because sometimes when I do like a group coaching call, my clients will come on and they present the rise and the rumble, which is how we start our calls. And then they start coaching themselves through it. They start talking about how they're going to solve it and what they're going to, I'm like, oh, my work's done here.
Just it makes your coach heart so happy. You're like, "Look,
So
yes, you
happy.
got this." Well,
Yes.
and whenever those people have really influenced you to switch out like you have for these women, to switch your
Yeah.
mindset when you're like, "Okay, what would Courtney tell me to think about in this
Yeah.
situation?" So then you learn how to hone your own questions. Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel I've had so many incredible mentors in my life in so many different disciplines
Oh,
where
yeah, same.
I kind of mimicked what they were doing and I learned and they asked me questions and I asked them questions and eventually it was like I could start getting further and further away from needing them so close to me. And that I truly believe it's a sign of a good teacher, it's a sign of a good coach. Like if someone needs me for 20 years, I'm not doing something right. Like at least for the way that I teach because
Yeah.
it's not therapy, right? I'm teaching a skill set to help them um basically lead themselves through the health arena with a lot more self-awareness and all the things we talked about, but ultimately it's going to help them in every dimension of their life.
Yeah. Because if you're self-led there, you're gonna just carry
Of
on those
course.
skills. You learn how to talk to yourself into
Yeah.
a whole different,
Yes.
sphere of what you're focusing on in life. Yeah.
It's so true. So the last practice, the last bucket of practices is the practice of realignment, because as we all know, misalignment is absolutely inevitable. Life is not rainbows and unicorns, right? One of my
What?
favorite quotes is, "Life is one long series of problem solving, and the sooner you accept that fact, the less you will suffer."
I love that. I've never
And
heard that before, but I love it because it is. You're just always having to figure it outable. It's like that
yeah,
Marie Forleo book she wrote. What's everything's figure
absolutely.
outable? Yeah.
Yes. And so you will get misaligned over and over again. And the one of the images I always use for that is like a campfire. I live in Montana. We build lots of campfires. And if you've ever built a campfire, you know it's a lot of work at the beginning. You got to go get the wood, you've got to build the circle, you've got to have like just the right amount of oxygen going into the fire. But once the fire is lit, all you have to do when the flame starts to die is you toss some wood in. And you can have a raging fire for a really long time. And that is really how we need to look at anything that we're trying to stay the course with. Number one, we have to know our cues of misalignment. So, how do you know you're getting misaligned? For me, I get really reactive. I want to eat a lot of carbohydrates, specifically sugar, right? Probably want to drink some alcohol, like I want to have some wine at night.
Hmm.
I'm definitely more problem focused rather than solution focused. So, I know my cues of misalignment. And the sooner I can identify that I'm starting to get misaligned with how I'm taking care of myself, the quicker I can get realigned. And realignment is not inevitable. Like I know women who have lived decades or even a lifetime misaligned. And what a
Mm.
tragedy, because you are here to do
Yeah.
some amazing things in your lifetime. Like you're here to create and support and serve and help and I don't know, whatever your gifts are. And if you are living consistently misaligned, you don't ever get to tap into that fountain.
Yeah.
And that doesn't just hurt you, it hurts all of us. It hurts
Everybody around you. Yeah.
everybody
They're
around
missing out
you.
on your gifts and what you have to give. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
But I think, don't you find it? I mean, you've done this work with women for such a long time. And I mean, again, men too. I
oh,
mean,
sure.
whoever the human is that's listening. But, I find it harder and harder more than I talk with women that they just feel like sometimes alignment is to sometimes give more or do more for everybody else and not necessarily listening into what the cues are that are needed for them to get back in alignment so they can do those
100%.
things.
And I do
Yeah.
want to offer that, and some people won't like hearing this, but I do classify it as a hiding habit. I think when women take a little bit of time to listen to what they actually want and need and desire, it terrifies them because what it does is it calls them into doing work that's going to make other people uncomfortable. It's going to be, they're going to stop being so convenient to everybody else's needs. They're going to have to maybe set some boundaries. They're going to have to do things that they don't have a practice of doing. And so I think that is the bigger reality, is that we often just retreat because what our knowing tells us is often terrifying. That
Mm,
it feels
yeah.
too big or it feels too scary. And that's where I think community and coaches and podcasts and books, they can be so supportive and just helping you to borrow some belief and borrow some courage and capacity from other people until you can build your own. And
Yeah. I love that.
yeah, it's a big thing, and it's so funny because one of the things, another mistake that I made early in my career is I always did one-to-one work, and I had this really fierce belief that there is no way on God's green earth that one-to-one coaching could translate to one-to-many coaching. But I got to a point in my business where I also knew I couldn't take any more one-to-one clients. Like, I was either gonna, like, tap out here
Yeah.
or I was gonna have to
You
change my
couldn't
business
duplicate
model.
yourself. Yeah. Mhm.
So I did started running group courses. Consistency Code was a group course, and then I opened a membership. And anyway, I'm telling you that because, oh my goodness, I did not realize the power of community in especially these conversations of trying to navigate the health and wellness world in a different way than what's out there, which is so much
Yeah.
about, again, how your body looks and what you eat and how much you move. And again, those latter two things are very important, how you're eating and how much you move, but there's a bigger conversation that needs to be had. And when I started having that conversation in larger groups of women, I realized, like, okay, people came into this to get coaching from me, but they stayed because of each other.
Yeah. Well, I
And
even think
that's a
about what
cool thing.
I do for the morning workouts that I have. Like, I really literally wanna change kind of what I'm focusing on at this
Yeah,
season in life. But guess what? I go back all the time and I'll just continue to do whatever workouts on the thing
yeah,
because of the community. It's the
yeah,
community. I know I'm gonna see my people. I've been doing it for 5 years. It's so supportive of me, not only physically, but mentally. And anything that I've done that I really feel like has been pretty significant, like if I would just say, like, Christy, what were you proud of? Here's some
yeah,
things
yeah,
I'd list out. All of them have been done in some sort of community, you know? And whether it be community of, like, peer consultation groups that I've been a part of, or, like, to your point, group coaching or group consulting, or, some type of a group experience where I pushed myself out of my comfort zone. Some of my hands down most favorable, like, tomorrow if I wasn't here and you're like, you could pull me back up and be like, Christy, what was the top 5 memorable? It was always in the something with community. It
yeah,
was never like, oh, I did this by myself and I
yeah.
got to the mountaintop and I overlooked and I didn't have anybody that helped me walk up the mountain. I was alone. No. You
Never,
know?
never. And I think it's an important distinction to make too, because I use the word self leadership a lot. And I always remind people it doesn't mean a solo effort. It
Yeah.
means that you're driving the car
Well,
and
you're leading from within. Yeah.
you're leading from within, but you have built. I always say that healing is a team sport. Like, you need
Oh,
to
agreed.
curate a team, and community is such a big part of that, and we normalize hard things in community. And the other cool thing is there's always people who are a few steps ahead of you, and there's always people who are a few steps behind you. So you get to be a leader and kind of someone who's still learning, and what an awesome place to be.
Yeah. It is, because then you're like, "Oh, wow, I'm not alone on this journey." Well, and you know what? I did a lot of one-on-one past in my past earlier career, as a therapist, and, a lot of times sometimes I wish I could put people together when I'd hear this person's story and then this person's story, and then
Right.
I'm like, "Man, can I merge you all together?" Because
Yes.
you in this moment think that you are the only one that
Yep.
is struggling, and it is a lonely place to be when you feel like these are the things that only you are going through. And then you don't even realize, because I can't tell nobody, that the person
Yeah,
right
of
before
course.
you or two
Yeah.
more, whatever, was going in the same thing. And I think there's a lot of validation in that. But then there's a lot of support and cheerleading. Like, you look,
Mm.
I'm getting through the hard. You can get through it too. Like, come on, let's keep going. And, I think it's been harder and harder for people to really sometimes get in community because community has kind of got lost somewhere with the whole digitization of life. There's opportunities for community and connection, but unless you're intentional about it, you might miss out. And so, what would you say to people that maybe aren't as intentional, or maybe they're wanting community, but they just don't know where to start, how to find it?
I mean, I think the easiest place, and again, not saying it's completely not like there will be discomfort still, but is
Hmm.
like follow the breadcrumbs of your interest. So if there's a skill set you want to learn, you want to take a dance class, or you want to learn how to write, or I don't know, something that again gets you in that beginner mindset that we were talking about earlier, because it's not even being a beginner is so valuable in so many ways. It keeps you present, it keeps you really focused because it's a new thing. So looking out into your community on what can you sign up for? Find circles of similar interest, like your exercise community, right? Everyone has a
Hmm.
similar interest. My community that I built, like it's the same thing. It's women who want to develop self-leadership skills. But what is something that's kind of been pulling at your heartstrings that you would that would also act as a double benefit, that you would also get exposed to some new humans who could support you in ways that your old humans maybe can't. I always say you don't have to get rid of your old friends, but you probably need to make some new ones, because not everyone in our circle that we've had for a gazillion years can support us in our next evolution,
Yeah.
right? And not in the way that we might need to be supported.
Right, right, and
So,
it's not maybe that they don't wanna be, they just may not be
yeah,
able to, because they may have not
exactly.
done their own stuff that we're talking about,
Exactly.
like the self-awareness and,
Yes.
being able to organize your life around what your resources are and things of that nature. Yeah.
Yeah, and also, I always like to remind my clients too, like, just be the one that extends an invite, because community doesn't have to
Mm,
be like a big room of people. It can just be like asking someone that you've been really interested in getting to know better out for coffee. And you know what?
yeah,
As adults, we all still wanna be invited. We might not always wanna go, but we still
that's
wanna be
right.
invited.
That's right. That is 100%. I've had to learn that throughout the years, because 'cause I'd also, sometimes be like, "I don't know if I really should invite so and so because I don't think they can come." And then I've learned that. They're like, "Please invite me even
Yeah.
if I can't commit to going," And so,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, and be willing to say yes, by the way, because you're gonna get invites too, where it's so tempting, I think, sometimes to isolate. And sometimes it's just effortful to go out, especially as we get older,
Mhm.
right? But
Yeah.
lean into the discomfort of that in service of building community. Because a lot of times I've become much more discerning about what I say yes to. But I do make sure that I occasionally say yes to things that I'm kind of tempted to say no to, because I'm not sure what's on the other side. And I'm rarely disappointed.
Yeah.
Yes, I have to get dressed, and yes, I have to get out of the house and all the things, but
Yeah.
I also get exposed to new people and some really fun things. And so I think that that can be a good practice too, is just to remember to say yes.
Yeah.
Yes to
I love that.
the
That's a good
invites you're
reminder.
getting.
Well, look, if the listeners have been like, "I've loved this conversation. I wanna dive a little bit more, and I wanna get my hands on this book, The Consistency Code," where can they find it, and how can they find more about you and connect with you?
Yeah, the best place is just my website, graceandgrit.com. The book we do have, you can get the first chapter for free if you want to kind of test it before you invest in it. And you can just, for that, just go to graceandgrit.com/free chapter. Super straightforward.
Okay. I love that. Well, y'all check it out. We'll make sure we have it all linked up so that you can go get it really easily. I know it, just like this conversation has already made me rethink about some things. I know that getting this book will also open up some things for you, especially if you felt like, man, I really want to follow through on some of those things that I'm feeling drawn towards or habits I'm wanting to create for my life. I know this book will be an incredible resource for you. So, Courtney, I just want to thank you for coming on the show today and like really, I know you birthed this book just from hearing your story, just out of a lot of time spent with trying to help women. And then you took it a step further and you're like, how can I just put all of this information into something that anybody can pick up, off
Yeah.
the shelf and learn, even though they're not maybe in my community or they're not able to accept, have access to me individually. How can I put this out there to the world? And I do want to share with people, because this is not going to come out until a little bit later, that you even won
Oh,
an
no, it's
award
already
around
out.
this
It came
book.
out last November.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
No, the award that I was talking
Oh,
about.
you can say, yeah, it's been announced.
Okay.
Yes.
Yes,
Amazing.
yes. So she even won an award for this book. So guys, you're going to need to check it out. I'm just throwing that out there. What is it called? You call it The
It's called
Rise?
an IPPY Award, and it's for independent publishing, and it's a global award. I mean, they have submissions from all over the world and lots of different categories. But yeah, it won an
Yeah.
IPPY Award, which is really
Well,
fantastic.
and that's one of your Rise things, right? That's what you call it, a
That
Rise?
is a
Whenever
ride for me,
Yeah.
for sure.
Well,
Yeah.
I love that. Well, listen, I'm curious, Courtney, if you could go back to maybe early podcaster you and
Yeah.
give yourself one piece of advice for you along the journey, what's one thing that you'd go try to tell yourself at this point, younger you?
I think younger me, and this has been just a through line through my entire life, and I'm still learning this, is just that there is so much power in the pausing. And
Mm.
it's not just pausing before a difficult conversation or pausing before I say yes to something. It's like I was explaining to you before we got on the show, right? It's like the extended pause. Like I'm kind of in, with some things happening in my business, I'm in like this liminal space of not knowing exactly what's next. Especially also, I think that happens when you come out the other side of doing something really big, like publishing a book. But now that I'm on the other side, it's like I'm not rushing to decide. And there's something so nourishing and beautiful about that. And oh my gosh, is it rooted in self-trust? I just have to look back at all the evidence that I have in my lifetime of knowing things are going to pan out, and that in due time, I will get more clear and, all of the things. And so it's just, I think for me, it's being okay with the pause sooner in my life. It would have saved me a lot of unnecessary suffering. And it would have saved a lot of people around me a lot of unnecessary suffering. Because sometimes I was a big reactor, right? I've always been very
Mhm.
driven and excited. And I always used to tell my parents, I'm not dramatic. I just feel things deeper than other people. But all of that to say, not knowing how to pause and not having a practice of that, it hurt relationships, right? And it made things harder for the people around me. And so now that I'm further down my lifeline, I can really see the gift in that. And I'm so glad that it has become a practice. And I definitely see the benefits everywhere.
Yeah. Well, look, I'm trying to learn how to do that a little bit more in my life now. So maybe you're gifting that encouragement to current me. So, and if you're listening too, y'all know I try to leave y'all with one thing that I'm taking away. And maybe that's just a great wrap up right there, is that, no matter where you're at right now, just remember you can pause, and then you can come to this self-awareness and, align those things. So no matter where you are, we hope that you take a pause today. And it may last a week. It may last a month. Heck, it may last a whole year or a decade. But, pause. And then when you feel you are called to something, maybe take a step in that direction. Well, until next time, thanks for being here, Courtney.
That's all for today on Inspiring Possible. If you found a little inspiration today, please go on over to iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you tune in to listen to leave us a comment and rate us. Also, make sure and link up with me at inspiringpossible.com to get the free Dream It, Write It, Do It workbook. And don't forget to follow us on social media and share this with anyone who needs to be inspired. Remember, if you can believe it, it's possible.